Macbeth analysis of Act 3. Summary. Firstly, in Act 3, Macbeth plots to kill Banquo. Then, both the Macbeths are worried about maintaining the kingship. After that, Banquo, Macbeth's best friend, is murdered. Macbeth then sees a vision, potentially out of guilt, of his friend's ghost after killing him. The Thanes are then very unhappy with Macbeth's rule, and the witches meet with the goddess of the witches. Finally, you start to see an uprising being plotted against the Macbeths, and it is planned by Lennox. Analysis of Act 3, Scene 1, Macbeth's plot to murder his best friend. Scene 1 is introduced by Banquo's soliloquy. This helps readers get deep into Banquo's inner thoughts, which reveals a number of things. It firstly reveals that he, like Macbeth, still thinks of the witches and their prophecy. However, we see that with Banquo, even though he still thinks of the prophecy, it doesn't drive his entire actions, and his ambition does not overtake him. Instead, we see that Banquo is more willing to lay back and let nature take its course, and let fate take ultimately its natural course. He also says that Macbeth placed most foully for the crown. This suggests that Banquo is quite suspicious of Macbeth and is not in favour of the way Macbeth has been acting. So we see here that he actually believes Macbeth used unjust means to get the crown or to get into his position. In Macbeth's soliloquy, he presents a large amount of uncertainty about his need to kill Banquo. He presents a large amount of certainty about his need to kill Banquo. Unlike before with Duncan, we saw lots of uncertainty as Macbeth was going back and forth in his decision of whether to kill Duncan or not. However, when it comes to killing Banquo, Macbeth is very, very certain that he wants to kill Banquo. This contrasts to his previous behaviour when he was doubting and was quite uncertain whether he should kill Duncan or not. This shows that Macbeth has now changed and become quite less fazed by murder. Macbeth ultimately doesn't kill Banquo himself. He hires murderers to do this instead. This suggests that Macbeth has changed in another way, as he is not as honourable as he was displayed in the first act. Here he is more cowardly and less respectable, as he's not going to do his own dirty work. Instead, he's hiring people to do it. Finally, we see that Lady Macbeth has actually gotten into Macbeth, as we see that Macbeth is becoming more and more like her when he questions the murderer's masculinity to persuade them, like what his wife did to him previously when he was unsure whether to kill Duncan or not. This shows that Macbeth is picking up his wife's persuasive skills, which suggests he has become the same kind of evil as his wife. Act 3, Scene 2, insecurity begins to kick in. Here the Macbeths are worried about keeping their kingship and feel quite insecure about this. Oxymorons portray this as there's an oxymoron in restless ecstasy, which shows how many mixed emotions are going on for the Macbeths, suggesting they're very, very uneasy and worried. Animal imagery is also used to create an unsettling and uneasy feeling. So the bat has flown is another example of where animals are used to present dark omens and dark feelings, which creates, as I've said before, an unsettling and uneasy feeling. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth's relationship dynamic seems to have changed here, as usually Macbeth would have consulted Lady Macbeth, or Lady Macbeth would have had to persuade Macbeth into killing, like the case with Duncan. However, when it comes to killing Banquo, he does so without his wife's consultation, suggesting that Macbeth may have become more dominant and masculine, like his wife wanted all along, or that perhaps killing and murdering Duncan changed him. Act 3, Scene 3, the murder of Banquo. Macbeth's paranoia and worry begins to manifest as he sends a third murderer to kill Banquo. The scene is dark, suggesting the darkness of Macbeth's reign, whereas there's a slight light in this scene. That light is what Banquo is carrying. It's the torch Banquo is carrying. So that suggests that Banquo is of good character, as he is the only light in the entire scene. When Banquo is killed and the light goes out, it suggests that the purity that came with Banquo will also perish. Banquo's son, Fleance, ultimately escapes, which suggests to us that ambition cannot cheat fate, as despite Macbeth's actions, the prophecy that Banquo's sons would become king could still come true, as Fleance has escaped and Banquo's sons are still alive. So that suggests that often fate triumphs free will and ambition. Act 3, Scene 4, The Ghost of Banquo. Macbeth starts off this scene in a happy, positive mood. He holds a feast thinking, yes, I have killed Banquo, my opposition has been wiped out. Macbeth, however, learns from one of the murderers that Fleance has escaped. We see that guilt overcomes him as a ghost of Banquo appears, catching Macbeth off guard. So we don't know whether the ghost appearing is a supernatural phenomenon or it's a manifestation of Macbeth's guilt. The ghost is a dramatic device used to present Macbeth's guilt. This isn't the first time visions will be used to show guilt. Throughout the play, Shakespeare uses visions again and again to present the guilt of the characters. For example, the dagger Macbeth saw before killing Duncan also presented that visions can be used to manifest or show guilt. Macbeth is so overcome by guilt in this scene that he is going crazy, and Lady Macbeth is forced to lie and say that Macbeth is unwell. So this entire scene shows guilt and how guilt is presented by Shakespeare. Act 3, Scene 5, The Goddess of the Witches. The witches meet up with the Goddess of the Witches. She is annoyed with the witches for meddling over the Macbeth situation. The witches wish to conjure apparitions to force Macbeth to continue his evil and terror-filled reign, which suggests that the witches themselves are the source of evil in Macbeth. Act 3, Scene 6, Lennox plans an uprising. At the start of the scene, Macbeth has formed an army against Macbeth already, as he's been suspicious of Macbeth from the start. Lennox is suspicious of Macbeth, however, does not make this obvious, over fears of living in disgrace like Macduff did. Lennox's true feelings are exposed in his speech, where he makes sarcastic remarks that allude to the fact that he actually believes Macbeth killed Duncan. For example, in the quote, Duncan's murder did grieve Macbeth, when in reality, he says Duncan's murder did grieve Macbeth, but in reality he meant the polar opposite, which suggests that ultimately, through the character of Lennox and sarcasm, Shakespeare is suggesting that Lennox really does not trust Macbeth and knows what Macbeth has done to achieve his kingship. Lennox ends the scene by sending a message to the English court, which leaves the reader very tense as to the extent Macbeth will go. And it also makes us think of what is going to happen in the next scene, and it gives a sense of the fact that an uprising is beginning to manifest and take form. I hope you found this video useful. Support us by liking, subscribing and sharing with your friends. If you have any questions, post it on our forum at examqa.com.